There's something about a cabin in the woods, isn't there? An escape from the noise, a return to quiet. We picture warm fires, starry nights, and peaceful, welcome isolation. But what if that isolation stops being peaceful? What if the silence gets broken by something that isn't supposed to be there? For three friends on a weekend getaway, their dream trip turned into something else entirely when they found a hidden bunker, and the horrifying videotapes left inside. These tapes told a story that wasn't over. This is what they found, and what found them. The fictional account you're about to hear is inspired by the terrifyingly real details of documented events. Keddy, the cabin trip was for Liam's birthday. He, his girlfriend Chloe, and their buddy Ben scraped together enough cash for a rental that promised to be blissfully remote. It was a classic A-frame, a little old but clean, surrounded by a thick forest of pines that swallowed the daylight. On their second day, Ben nearly snapped his ankle when he fell through a rotten sheet of plywood covered in leaves. It wasn't just a hole. It was a doorway with rusted metal rungs leading down into the dark. They'd found a small, cinder-block bunker that smelled of cold, damp earth. And inside, on a dusty shelf, sat 3 VHS tapes labeled simply 1, 2, and 3. Back in the cabin, a dark curiosity won out. There was an old VCR under the living room TV. With a nervous laugh, Liam pushed the first tape in. Grainy, early 80s footage flickered to life. A woman in her mid-30s was laughing, trying to fix a young boy's messy hair. The camera panned around a cozy, wood-paneled living room, and a cold knot formed in their stomachs. It was the same room they were in now. The same stone fireplace, the same ugly floral couch they were sitting on. The happy family scene cut abruptly to night. The camera was now hidden, positioned high on a shelf, looking down. The woman, Sue, was there with her teenage son, John, and his friend, Dana. But they weren't alone. 2 shadowy figures were forcing the boys to the floor, binding their hands and feet with appliance cords and medical tape. Sue was pleading, her voice a desperate, muffled sound under the low hum of angry male voices. Liam, Chloe, and Ben sat frozen, unable to look away. One of the intruders held up a hammer, the metal glinting. The violence was sudden and brutally efficient. The victims were bludgeoned and stabbed, right there in the living room. It was an absolute slaughter. In a final, chilling twist, the footage showed that the family's younger daughter, Tina, who was supposed to have been there, was now gone. Vanished. The video kept rolling in silence for another 10 minutes, a static shot of the horrific aftermath. Then, snow. Chloe was sobbing, her hands clamped over her mouth. Ben was pale, staring at the blank screen. Liam felt a cold dread creep over him. He went to the window, staring into the pitch-black woods, where every shadow now looked like a person. He told himself it was an elaborate, sick prank. But the terror on the victims' faces wasn't acting. The details were too specific. They mirrored the infamous, unsolved murders at the Keddy Resort in 1981. In cabin 28, a mother, her son, and his friend were found bound and murdered in an almost identical fashion. The youngest daughter, Tina, disappeared from the cabin that night. Her skeletal remains weren't found until 3 years later, miles away. The watcher, "We have to call the cops," Chloe said, her voice shaking. "And tell them what?" Ben shot back. "That we found a spooky tape in a hole. They'll think we're insane." Liam hated to admit it, but Ben was right. What proof did they have? But a morbid, nagging part of him needed to see the second tape. He told himself it was about finding answers. The others reluctantly agreed, needing to know what else was on them. Liam ejected the first cassette and slid in the second. This footage was different. There was no dialogue, only the faint sound of wind. The camera was outside, filming a frame cabin from a distance, hidden in the trees. A different family was there, a dad, a mom, and a little girl. The camera zoomed in, its movements slow and steady. It was the patient, unwavering gaze of a predator studying its prey, learning their routine as they played in the yard, lingering on the girl. The footage jumped forward. It was night. The camera was closer now, right at the tree line, zoomed in on the cabin's windows. Inside, the family was oblivious, bathed in the warm glow of their lamps. The dad read a book while the mom and daughter played a board game. It felt deeply wrong to be watching, like they were complicit in the act of stalking. Then, the camera started moving. The image shook as the person holding it crept from the woods and up to the cabin itself. They moved to a side window, peering into the daughter's bedroom. She was asleep. The camera held on her for a full, terrible minute. Then it panned away, focusing on the front door. A gloved hand entered the frame, slowly reaching for the doorknob. The knob began to turn. Suddenly, a loud bang from their own porch made all three of them jump. Ben grabbed a fireplace poker, his knuckles white. Liam's heart hammered against his ribs. He crept to the window, the same one from the video, and peeked out. The porch was empty. But a rocking chair was swaying, as if someone had just stood up from it. Was it the wind? Or were they so on edge that a falling pine cone sounded like a gunshot? They tried to rationalize it, but the fear from the tape was now real and in the room with them. They weren't just watching a story anymore. They were in one. The bunker they were in too deep to stop. The only way out was through the last tape. Fear was now mixed with a desperate need to see the end. Liam's hands were shaking as he pushed the final cassette into the VCR. The image that flickered to life was the most horrifying yet. It was filmed inside the bunker. The damp concrete walls were unmistakable. A man, Leonard, was speaking to the camera, his eyes unnervingly calm. He explained his twisted philosophy about surviving a global collapse and the need for what he called off-the-shelf sex partners to help rebuild society. It was the narcissistic, detached rambling of a monster justifying the atrocities he was about to commit. Then the tape cut. A different room, deeper inside the bunker. A woman was tied to a chair, crying. A younger man, Charles Ng, walked into the frame holding a knife. He began cutting the woman's clothes off, coldly telling her that crying wouldn't help, that they were cold-hearted. Liam, Chloe, and Ben finally understood. They were watching the documented, real-life evil of Leonard Lake and Charles Ng, who committed their crimes at a remote cabin in Woolseyville, California. These men built a bunker specifically to hold and torture their victims, filming the entire process. It's estimated they tortured and murdered between 11 and 25 people. They were watching a serial killer's personal home video collection. As the final, sickening images died, a new sound came from outside. Not a bang. It was a scrape. A loud, dragging scrape of metal on stone. It was coming from the direction of the bunker. Someone was out there, pulling the heavy cover off the entrance. Ben fumbled for his phone. No service, he whispered, his voice cracking. Of course. blissfully remote. Chloe stared at the front door, which Liam suddenly realized they had never locked. The scraping stopped. A heavy, dead silence fell over the woods, more terrifying than any noise. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps on the gravel path leading to their porch. They weren't rushing. They knew their prey wasn't going anywhere. The footsteps stopped right outside. A floorboard on the porch creaked under a heavy weight. A dark silhouette blotted out the moonlight in the front door's small window. It just stood there, watching them. And then, a gloved hand slowly reached for the doorknob. The stories on the tapes were over, but a new one was just beginning. The terror they'd only witnessed on a screen was now on their doorstep. What is it about the woods that calls to the darkest side of human nature? If you have your own terrifying cabin or camping story, I want to read it. Share it in the comments below. And if you want to hear more true horror stories that feel a little too close to home, make sure you like this video and subscribe. Stay safe out there.